creating some new opportunities. And so this is our first online event, and we will continue to provide more programming as the opportunity arises. So welcome again, thank you for being here, and let's go on into the studio and hear from Jim.
Thank you, Bernard. Hello, everybody. We'd like to welcome you to the studio and hope you're all doing well and with loved ones and enjoying these times of reflection and being with loved ones. So thank you. Bernard Lebov, thank you so much for having me here, hosting me at Boxo. So far, it's been an amazing experience, a unique experience, and I'm finding the monastic life suits me at this time right now. So for those of you who don't know my work, I'll give a little bit of an introduction. In 2017, I came to Boxo with the idea of making work dealing with the desert, and that came out of a practice that I've been involved with for about 25 years, which is to work specifically with nature and to try to focus on processes and structures in nature that we might not necessarily get an opportunity to see very often or study or meditate on. So I walk out into the landscape and I try to find things that are incredibly interesting to me, and then try to figure out a way to capture those for the viewing audience. So some of you probably know my spore drawings, which are mushroom spore on paper. Most of the time, the mushroom spore are white, and it's a treated black painted surface that the paper is prepared with. This piece is called crust, and it's about 84 inches tall. So you can see that these can be large pieces, and it's very interesting to me that the spore works have a kind of scalelessness. They can be galactic in their reference, and they can also be completely minuscule. So I love getting deep in and getting close to nudging your nose up against materials, and then also drawing far back from it. I also do things like spiderweb captures, which is another very straightforward process where the spider is chased off the web. I apologize to him or her for stealing her home, and then I stain the web and push paper through it to capture it onto the page. So what you're seeing is the actual spider web stained and attached to the paper. The mushroom spore drawings, the mushroom gill ejects the spore, and if the gill is resting against the paper, you get almost a photographic image. But if the mushroom gill is hovering above the paper when it drops its spore, that spore drifts for a while. So sometimes you get these beautiful smoky kind of trails that happen that one can't anticipate. So I love the idea of creating opportunities for things to happen that I don't have complete control of, and I try to remove the artist's hand as much as possible. But with the Boxo project, coming out to Joshua Tree, it was a slightly different process. I really wanted to involve myself in addressing the environment in a way that calls attention to the fragility of the desert landscape and perhaps some parts of the desert that are at risk. So when I came out in 2017, I was introduced to Mark Wheeler, who probably knows more about the Mojave Desert and the surrounding area than just about anyone here. And Mark was generous enough to take me on a hike, look at my work, and talk with me extensively about what my options might be. And what I decided on was that desert crust, also known by many names, including cryptobiotic soil, is a delicate and threatened material here in the desert. It takes up the upper 3 millimeters of the desert soil where it exists, and it's highly fragile. If it's walked on or driven over, it can be severely damaged. And what I wanted to do is try to call attention to the fragility of that structure, which really is important to the desert's function. It provides a ground cover that allows other species to take foothold, and it also prevents soil erosion, sand erosion, and stabilizes the environment. So it's very, very important stuff. And with the encroachment of mankind and using the desert more and more, it's important for us to be aware of that fragility so that we can take the necessary steps to make sure that we're good stewards of the environment. So what I did was I got the opportunity to take a very small portion of that desert crust from a colleague back at Lafayette College, and I actually have to say I should thank Lafayette College as well as so many other people here in the Joshua Tree Desert for their support. Lafayette's been very supportive with programmatic funding so that I could make this trip available to myself, the supplies and materials. So Lafayette and the faculty members there and students have been excellent and very supportive. So at Lafayette, I was able to take a little bit of this desert crust from a colleague, Lori Caslake, who collects the crust, and bring it. Thank you, Jake. I know. Yes, I love you too. Jake's great. So I was able to take some of that desert crust and use an electron microscope at Lafayette to put that crust underneath the microscope and blow it up to a 400 magnification, and then photograph those images and create an amalgam of them so that you could understand, or the public could understand, what this crust is. And I decided that if I was going to do an educational component with this, so that we can bring the community to a better understanding of what this stuff is, that I would have to build some prototypes and some panels that could be used as an educational tool. So the image you see here is an amalgamation of 4 or 5 different mediums, living structures, algae, fungi, mycelium, let's see, what else? Lichen and moss, and then there are some microscopic pebbles in here, and then here in this case I took just the mycelium, and which is these very thin pieces of fabric, living fabric that are kind of the root structure of mushroom organisms, of fungi, and doubled those up, tripled up those so that they became a webbing of a sort that could imply what that form looks like. And the idea was build these shapes large enough as these hexagons, which reference organic geometric structure, and create panels that could be used as building blocks for installation, whether it be a structure being built for a public area, an area that has a trailhead or a national park, or wherever the public would go for an experience in the desert. I thought it was important that we could build some kind of environment that gave a little bit more information to the public about what that is. So I wanted to build some prototypes. So what you'll see here is some of those prototypes that have been built. This is, again, that mycelial structure, and I'll show you how I made that in a second. And this is all just rubber cast. this is actually the other elements which you saw, the first panel that I showed you of lichen and moss and some mycelial elements. And I colored these things just to imply the fact that these are living organisms rather than just have a gray or a black or just a tan element to them. So the way I made those was by working with a fabricator who actually has a laser cutter, and we took high density foam and used the image, that photograph, to burn that image into the high density foam, and then this would be used as a mold that a two-part rubber would then be poured into, and then painstakingly pulled out by some wonderful students who helped me, because I would just rip the stuff out of there and it would never exist. It would never survive with my stupid, grubby, aggressive thumbs. This is the other form that you saw, and again it was burned into the high-density foam. What it looks like when it's initially burned into the foam is more of kind of a landscape that looks just like high plateaus. And once I had this form, then I came in with a little Dremel tool to carve these out and create a more volume and topography to the shape. So then what you would see from there would be a cast of that positive form, which this is. So this was actually cast from here as the negative form. And then this rubber, this other type of rubber, was poured into this shape that had walls around it and became the structure that you see here. Ideally, what would happen is all of this negative space would be removed when we would build a panel, so those panels would have open spaces through them. So they would be kind of a woven pattern rather than a solid mass. I had the great opportunity of working with Joe Biondo, who's a wonderful architect who lives in the Lehigh Valley, and we've worked together before. And Joe consulted with me over much time, and we talked about using the components as building blocks, and then I asked Joe to visualize what that might look like if we were to take these forms out into the desert, be it at a trailhead or wherever. So Joe kind of gave his thoughts about that through these drawings, and as we discussed that, we thought that it would be important for those panels to actually come down onto the floor as well, the floor of the desert as well. So Joe took those drawings and articulated them a little bit further, and then I came back into them a little bit to work them a little bit further, just as an opportunity for the viewer or for possible hosts like the Mojave Desert Land Trust or the National Park to actually see what could be done. And since they're panels and components that build this, there's a scalability to these pieces. So that's where we are right now, and we're talking with a variety of possible hosts about actually taking this and building a structure, which would be my dream, one of my dreams. So hopefully that can happen. But while I was doing this, I was very aware that I'd have a lot of time at Boxo, and not only wanted to show this, but then take some of these images and manipulate them. So I brought a bunch of prints with me, as you can see around the studio, and I've been spending some time working into these images. This is a digital print of mycelium that was manipulated a lot and then hand manipulated beyond that to articulate some forms in here. This piece has some casting elements to it from the actual mycelial print, which is right here. So this actually got rolled with printer's ink, and then I printed those forms there. And I'm still playing with all these ideas, having a lot of fun, and I look forward to continuing that for a little bit longer. So I'm not sure if we're going to be able to take questions as we are here, but I'm happy to take some online through Facebook and Instagram. So please feel free to do that. And I want to thank everyone again for tuning in. This was the first live feed one of the first live feeds from Boxo, I think, in the studio. And it's pretty exciting for me. It's the first time I've done this. I wish you all health and well-being and peace. Bernard, thank you so much for the opportunity. And thanks everyone who has been a huge help to me here today. Thanks for joining us. You guys take care.